Well, Saturday night sees the fantastic rematch, doesn't it, in prospect between Anthony Joshua and Alexander Usyk of the Ukraine after that perfect storm bout last year in which Usyk took Anthony Joshua's world titles. They're back on the line, the first fight for the pair of them since last September. And also Tyson Fury, of course, has thrown his titles away now effectively by retiring. And so his ring belt is also up for grabs. To look ahead to the fight, for best of bets is former WBO super featherweight champion Barry Jones, who did such a great job for us earlier in the year. And so Barry, having reaped in millions of pounds for our punters during that preview of Tyson Fury against Dillian Whyte, we want your thoughts on what's going to happen this Saturday over in Saudi Arabia. AJ, timid was the description of his performance in that bout last year. He's talked about coming out this time and not boxing, but fighting and going for the knockout. How do you see it going?
Yeah, this is another intriguing fight, and I think that they both know each other now, so they know what it feels like to be in the ring, and that helps both and hinders both in equal measure, as you would say. But he has to be more aggressive, Joshua. He tried to outbox the boxer, and it failed, and it was always going to fail. And it was really a silly idea trying to think you could do that. He has to be aggressive, but we're also everyone in boxing saying the same thing. He has to go out there and and force the pace and really put it on Usyk. But Joshua was never this an abandoned monster that we talk about. He's always been a boxer. He's always been aggressive, and the power has always been evident in his shots. But he always did it in a smart way. He went behind the jab. He kept his hands up high, and he kept his shape when he was being offensive. But when he got hurt, he went back to the street kid, and he fired. He didn't look for a way out. He fired. Now, since the Andy Ruiz fight, his first loss in Madison Square Gardens back in 2019, he's been slightly timid. Now, not massively, but ever so slightly timid about being under pressure when punches are being thrown his way. And now he's been maybe a better boxer, more defensive-minded. But that's taken away his raw strength, his magic, which was, you hit me and I'm going to hurt you before you really hurt me. And he needs that animal back again. So he needs to go forward. He needs to put pressure on Usyk. He needs to make that physical strength and presence tell. He needs to make Usyk feel the power early. Usyk's bulked up. You can see it physically. If anyone's seen the videos of him, he looks physically bigger. He's grown into the weight because he was a former cruiserweight king, of course. And now this is only his fourth fight, as a heavyweight, actually, Alexander Usyk. But he looks physically bigger. And I think that shows an intent that he's going to try and walk Joshua down. And he'll do it cleverly. He'll make Joshua miss. He'll block the shots and he'll go forward and he'll advance and he'll make Joshua work hard. And that's where I feel that I think it's a more entertaining scrap. Joshua always has that power to get him out of trouble. You can never count out anyone in the heavyweight division with the power and strength that Anthony Joshua has. But I think he tries harder to get to be more of an impression on Usyk. And that's why I feel it doesn't go to points this time. And that Anthony Joshua, because he tries so hard to get Usyk out of there, tires quicker than he did in the first fight. If people remember, if they watched the first fight, in the last round, Joshua was in trouble because he was physically exhausted because he tried to hit a target that he couldn't hit clean. Now it's going to be a case of he's going to get hit every time he throws a shot. And I think Usyk stops him late. I hope I'm wrong because, being a British a British fan and a former British boxer, then I want the British guy to win, of course. But I just think that Joshua tries more to be more of an impression, but that ends up being more of a negative result for him, and he gets tired. And Usyk, as he did as a cruiserweight, always makes you work harder than you want to work. So a lot of Usyk's fights, they look like they're close, but after round, depending on your tank, after round 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you're tired, and he hasn't done much. He's just made you work hard and want to work. Then he goes to work really quickly, really impressively. And I think he stops Joshua late.
There's a lot of talk about his speed by comparison to AJ. Do you subscribe to that opinion? And if so, as somebody who's been out there and done it, how do you combat somebody who is quicker than you?
Well, timing outdoes blind speed, but Usyk has speed and timing, so it's thought behind his work. Joshua has fast hands actually, and when he can relax, he got this nice rhythm to his work. Anthony Joshua, he can unload those fast, correct combinations, and they are correct. He punches inside the body frame, so nothing's wild with Joshua. It's all clean work. So he generates speed because it's clean work. So he has fast hands himself. He can almost match him for speed, not quite, but almost. But it's the foot speed that's the difference. Now, what Usyk does, he blocks and counters, so he takes the shot on the arms. And that's why, because he's bulked up now, he's felt Joshua's weight in the shots, and he thinks, I need to be a bit heavier to absorb the punches a bit more. But he spins around the target. He puts you under pressure with that front foot, but he moves. He doesn't really move back too much. He move back a step, but he'll take a spin to the left, a pivot to the right. So he's on you, but he's not there to be hit. He's not in front of you to be hit. So you have to turn, and that slows you down. So that speed that Usyk has is more of an illusion than actual natural speed. But his time is impeccable. His shot selection's good, and his engine is really good. And so Joshua, you tend to think Joshua comes in lighter, so he can match that work rate possibly, or he can be able to throw more punches and not tired as early, but also he needs that physical strength and weight. What he needs to do, which he's not going to do, is be able to lean all over Usyk early in the fight and make Usyk try and push him off and waste loads of energy. When a bigger guy leans on top of you, it tires you out. You're the one pushing and pulling. He just puts his weight on top of you. And he needs to make Usyk feel the power early. Hit him anywhere. I mean, literally anywhere. From the ankles to the top of the head. Just make him feel the power. Don't matter if you get warned by the referee. It doesn't matter if you get a public warning even. You're not banking on boxing this guy. You're banking on trying to knock him out. So make him feel your strength. Make him feel your power. Throw him. Do all these things. But Joshua is a neat, clean boxer. And we forget that. So he doesn't do that stuff naturally. As a Derek Chisora would, or a Dillian White possibly would. They're more, rougher. Joshua is neat and tidy, and you don't win an Olympic medal if you're not that way.
So did AJ just simply not throw enough punches in their last fight?
He didn't try and close the space off. You got to try and walk Usyk down. You're the bigger guy, make him feel that presence. And try and do that. But with doing that, you're going to miss. With doing that, you're going to walk out the punches. There's a risk with everything that he does in this fight. So there should be at this level. There's not in every fight there should be a risk when you're boxing at the highest level. So whatever he does, there's a risk. If he tries to box him, then he has to be light on his feet, and that empties your tank more, because you're a big lump. You're 16, 17, 18 stone man jumping up and down on your balls of your feet. You're not a 9-stone guy like I was. And if you're pushing forward, trying to make you feel your weight, you're putting more purchase on your punches. That takes more energy. And if you're missing, and if you're walking onto shots, you might get tired and knocked out. So there's a risk either way. But the only way he wins is by either knocking Usyk out or knocking him down enough times to have a massive, points advantage going into those later rounds.
Talk to me about coaches. There's been plenty of made about boxing coaches over the years, and of course AJ has changed coaches. Robert Garcia now involved with him. What do you expect? What sort of influence do you expect Garcia to have on the way AJ fights on Saturday?
When anyone changes a coach fight by fight for one particular fight, I'm always worried that there's never, and also when they keep other people involved in the camp. It's like a football club. You change the manager, but the assistant manager and the coaches don't get sacked. But you tend to think everyone brings their new people in. But they haven't done that. One guy's come in, and Angel Fernandez, who's still meant to be, might be the main voice still in the corner, has stayed. Robert McCracken has left. I don't know how that dynamic works, because Robert Garcia doesn't train heavyweights for a start. So that's a different type. Heavyweight boxing and other weights are almost a different sport. But he does like aggressive fighters, Robert Garcia. He likes his fighters to be bullies in the ring, which is, again, a sign of intent from Joshua's camp that they are going to be more aggressive. They're trying to find out the best way and the safest way to implement their size and put pressure on Usyk. So I think it's a good technically it's a good idea. But again, too many voices in the corner like there was in the last fight. There was too many people telling too many different things. And because Joshua hasn't boxed all his life, like a Tyson Fury, who can think on his feet. Joshua carries out instructions, maybe better than any boxer, certainly in that weight division, he really does. But he only carries out instructions. He doesn't think for himself because he took up the sport late. That's fine. So he has to learn how to think for himself. And also, there only needs to be one voice telling one thing. Otherwise, he can't carry instructions into the ring if in that minute rest, 3 different people are telling him different things. You focus on one voice. So there needs to be one voice in the corner. I don't know who that's going to be. And he needs to trust. The trust against a fighter. A trust, you can have anyone train you. I'd say this. You can have anybody train you. But when your back's against the wall, when you're in trouble, when you're hurt, when you're losing a fight, the trust is more important than what's being said. You need to trust that guy that the trainers, the fighter is going to do what you tell him. Because if the trainer might tell you something that's not going to be fun, you got to take a shot to give a shot, and you're going to, we're not doing that. But if you trust a guy, you'll do it. Can that trust be formed? Can it be bonded in a short period of time? I'm not quite sure. But it is a guy who likes aggressive fighters, and Robert Garcia, so you tend to think that's a sign of what Joshua's going to do. So I think it's a better fight to watch, actually, this one. I think it'd be, the other one wasn't bad, but I think this one will be more of an explosive fight.
Well, we're obviously really looking forward to it. What about, AJ, if he wins this, and he's clearly not the favourite to do so, but if he did so, and, three times a world champion, you're thinking about some of the greats who've been involved, and there's obviously one certain M. Ali who stands out in that respect, back in the 60s and 70s doing this. Where would that put him in terms of the greats of heavyweight boxing?
It puts him as a it doesn't put him in the greats, to be honest. I don't feel. I mean, I'm older man, so I don't try to romanticize too much about past the eras, but it's who you're up against. That's the problem he has. His resume is probably the best in heavyweight boxing because he's boxed more top contenders than any other heavyweight out there. But he hasn't boxed Wilder, who was his biggest rival for a while when Tyson Fury had his hiatus, of course, and he hasn't boxed Fury. When Fury had his hiatus, and he hasn't boxed Fury, who is clearly the best heavyweight on the planet right now, though he is retired for the 15th time this week. So he has changed his mind. He's probably changing his mind as we speak. And then he's probably retired before this podcast will be finished. But he needs to fight one of those to cement any sort of legacy, I feel. But still, it makes him an outstanding champion and an outstanding boxer. But he hasn't boxed in great eras. That's what I'd say. The 90s, the 70s and the 90s were really fantastic eras for boxing. So Evander Holyfield's, Lennox Lewis's, and certainly Ali Frazier's, all those fighters are lucky and unlucky that they had to fight each other. So that cemented their legacy. Though we may look back on this era in another 15 years' time and say how great it was, I would think. But until he fights one of those, or Fury certainly fights him, and then that gives that little round robin scenario that we've always wanted in the heavyweight division. I think that's where he needs it. But as far as being a 3-time heavyweight champion of the world, it's some feat. It really, and it shows a resolve in a fighter to want to come back from defeats and beat, like Lennox Lewis did, beat the man who beat you. That takes a lot of guts and a lot of courage, and you have to give him loads of credit for that.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get to the nitty gritty then, Barry. We are best of bets. We're advising people on where they're thinking about placing those wagers. You've already said pretty much who you think will win it and at what sort of stage, but let's just recap. Usyk is the 10-17, the odds-on favourite to win it at any point. The draw, which is obviously improbable and therefore priced at 27-1, or AJ, a best price 23-12 at the moment. So odds against to win back his titles. Usyk, clearly you're favouring for the win. Just recap then on when you think that might happen, and then people who might fancy an individual, bet on which round he might finish it in, something like that.
I think people tend to think that Joshua for the knockout, Usyk on points, and I understand that, but I think Usyk stops him. I think Joshua tries so hard that come round 7, 8, 9, he's exhausted. So I would say anywhere from 9 to 12, I would put a bet on Usyk for every one of those rounds. Or if you do group betting or round betting like that, I would go 9 to 12. That I think Usyk because Usyk never puts his foot on the gas. He waits for you until you're exhausted before he does it. If anyone's seen him box in the past, then you'll see that against, obviously, Tony Bellew, who was a British fighter. That's a fine example. He made him work hard and then stopped him, later on. This is a bigger guy, so he's going to have to wait more for that because there's more risk to getting hit. So I think Usyk from round 9 on, yeah, I would go anywhere from them rounds on if that's a feasible bet, of course.
Okay, so round 9 onwards, people can look for those individual prices if they fancy just round by round betting, or if you can find group betting, then obviously that's Barry's thoughts on it. But just let's take the counter argument as well for those who are watching and still think, now I'm throwing out what Barry says, AJ is going to win it. If AJ is going to win it, therefore, is that going to be with a barrage early doors? Are you going to be taking a price on one of the early rounds for that?
I think so. I think those first 3 rounds will be really, really tetchy. I don't think much will happen. So I sort of discard the first 3 rounds. But at some point, he's got to hurt. So it'll be a relatively clean shot, and then he piles him on. So I would say, and again, I'm not going to make it easy for you. So 4 to 6, I would go maybe for Joshua for the stoppage, because he's going to have to try hard. But I think after that, I think Joshua might start to feel the pace and get exhausted. So again, because I think he's going to try a lot harder to hurt Usyk than he did in the first fight. And with that, a caveat that your tank empties quicker. So yeah, I think I think the first 2 rounds will be really, really tactical for both, not one to make a mistake. And then after that, then Josh is going to put his foot on the gas and take a risk. So yeah.
Well, we're looking forward to it. It's going to be another intriguing, hopefully explosive fight. Anthony Joshua, Alexander Usyk, 2 on Saturday, the 20th of August at the Jeddah Superdome in Saudi Arabia. As ever, Barry Jones, many thanks for your time and your opinions.
My pleasure. Cheers.